Make a start. So I sent out an email to you all yesterday just to alert you to the fact that I was just going to modify the syllabus just very slightly, nothing really too significant. But so originally the plan was today to show you another NOVA video, which is a really great video about volcanoes, Deadliest, I think it's called the Deadliest volcanoes. So obviously I'm not going to do that. And so instead what I want to do, I want to do three things. I thought we would look at this Hawaii eruption again for obvious reasons. I obviously need to complete the lecture that we sort of only got halfway through last time. And then I decided to take the opportunity to introduce you to a project that I'm very much hoping that many of you will want to participate in. And that's a project to turn your smartphones into seismometers. And I'll explain that when we get to it. So that's what I want to do today. And then I encourage you all to go and watch that NOVA video. It's actually available online. And there is a link to it from the class website where the lecture notes are. You know, it's a typical 50-minute NOVA video. It's really good. So please go and watch that. Consider that to be homework. Okay? So that's the plan. Let me remind you again that you have a midterm on Tuesday. It'll be the same drill as last time. So please wait outside, and then we'll call you in, and we'll go through the same drill that we did last time. Yeah, Tuesday. Yeah. The next class, Tuesday. Any other questions? Okay, so I just wanted to show you the latest update on this flow. This is the same map that Michael was showing you on Tuesday, but this is yesterday's update. And so the red is the new lava flow as of yesterday, okay, and then the sort of pink is the lava flow prior to that. Just to kind of give you a sense, and of course, this is the town, this is the main street through the town, and then Highway 130, which is sort of the big Hawaii highway, is a little bit further back. It's not on this map, it's a little bit further back in. Obviously, the lava flow is coming from here all the way down here. You can see that it's these breakouts, as they called, from this flow. So remember that there's this cold crust on the surface of this flow and then the hot lava underneath, which is sort of essentially creating a pipe. And so you get these breakouts, not just at the tip of the flow, but also out at the side, and you can see that in the cemetery area and further up here. To give you a sense of how much it can change from a day-to-day basis, yesterday's map looks like this, okay? So this is the flow that occurred the day that we talked about this with Michael on Tuesday, and you can see that sort of significant wide flow pushing forward. So this was on, at the end of the day on the 28th, and so again, these are the buildings. So you can see that's where it was at the end of Tuesday, and then this is where it is at the end of Wednesday. And so as of where it is exactly right now, I'm not sure, but this is the closest building, so it's probably actually now starting to impinge on some of these buildings. If we look at the photos, you can see, so this is that building that's closest. This is the toe of the flow. It's going to the left. This is the road through the center of the town, and then Highway 130 is over here. So you can see that it's gradually getting closer and closer. So, of course, this is very different to earthquakes. There is no instantaneous threat here. People can see it's coming, and they know it's coming, and obviously can easily get out of the way. But, of course, there's not much you can do if your house is built right in the path of the lava flow. And as Michael was talking about, they see this as being kind of inevitable. And so nobody's trying to divert it. They're just letting it continue to flow. Of course, it's going to keep going. It's been going since June 27th, so this has been going on for many months, and likely will continue to go on. And so more and more lava will just continue to flow out. It'll probably make its way all the way out to the coast, on the eastern coast of the Big Island. And, of course, it may break out into other pieces off to the side. So we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, so that's just an update. Any questions, comments, thoughts about this? Yeah, so this flow, it's called the June 27th flow. So I think it started on June 27th. And I'm sorry, I'm not being funny. I assume that's why it's named that. I actually don't know that. But so that means that it's been flowing for almost 6 months at this point. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, maybe Michael mentioned, we can see these lava lakes in the caldera on Hawaii. So there's lava there all the time. And then it just sort of takes different paths at different times. And so remember that this is a shield volcano. So this comes back to the lecture. We talked about shield volcanoes on Tuesday. So this has this low silica content lava, so it's relatively runny. And so you have these very long continuous eruptions and very long continuous flows as a result. And that contrasts with what we'll talk about next, which is composite volcanoes, which have big explosive eruptions that typically don't last very long. So those are the two different types. Yeah. Yeah, so Michael, the question was, can they cool it? And that's essentially trying to divert the flow or stop the flow. Or, if you were to try and cool this propagating front, maybe the flow would then be flowing out and going around. So that's the issue, is that the flow isn't going to stop, and it probably is going to go on for many more months. So even if you were to go and start to cool this front here, right? So even if you were to start to cool this front here and essentially build a lava wall here, it's just going to flow around it. So it's going to hit the town. Essentially, it's going to hit the town one way or another. You would have to have a very long, you'd end up with let me go back to the map. So the flow is coming in this direction. This is the main strait of the town, so there's houses all along here. So you would have to keep cooling it so it diverts around a very wide swath. You'd have to make it go a long way uphill, and geologic processes just don't like that. So that's why Michael was making the comment that efforts to divert these things in the past just haven't worked. No, I'm not sure they've done it here, but they certainly used to try to do this in Vesuvius in Italy in the past, in the 80s. Any other questions, comments? Yeah. So yes, the question was, can't you dig a big ditch? And basically the lava would fill the ditch. But then the issue becomes, so if this continues to go on for the next year, 6 months, 3 months, the total volume of lava is a huge volume. It doesn't have to be a very big ditch. So at some point you have to, but this kind of brings up this interesting dilemma when it comes to hazard mitigation. How much effort, how much money are you willing to put into preventing the hazard, right? The hazard here is that some, maybe not too large a number, maybe half a dozen houses are going to get burnt by this lava flow. If it continues in this narrow path, then it's going to affect some smallish number of houses. Of course, it's also going to cross the highway, so that could be a challenge. And so do you want to invest, land moving, digging stuff, and keep digging for the next year? Or do you just let it take its path and recognize that there's going to be half a dozen homes that are destroyed? Yeah. So the question is, all these creative ideas. If your house is on stilts, made of cement, not wood, how would it fare? I think that the issue is that the lava would inevitably start to erode the base of the stilts. So I'm not sure how sustainable it is to live on concrete stilts above an active lava flow. I'm not sure I want to be there for sure. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so the question is, will it break off? So you can see here, for example, right, there's a piece that's sort of breaking off. As Michael pointed out, these blue lines are the rivers, and so downslope is in this direction. So everything is going to go basically in this direction. But these ones could break off, and then they would actually hit more homes. That's true. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, where's it like to break off? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a very complicated sort of process that's going on underneath this flow, I guess. But it's true that once it's gone through the town, if it does create essentially a lava tube, right, as in you have nice hard crust on the top and around the sides, then the lava is going to prefer to just keep going along the tube rather than breaking off and hitting other homes to the side. So in a sense, if it just goes straight, it's just going to hit some small number of homes again. But again, the issue will be the road. When it cuts off the road, what will they do? Yeah. Well, so this is the cemetery, but my understanding is that half the cemetery is under the flow, and this is the half that's not. Okay, any other questions? I thought it was interesting. I mean, it's sort of, hazard mitigation challenges in real time. Sort of, you can't do that with earthquakes. Okay, so you can find this. This is very easy to find. If you just search for the Hawaii Volcano Observatory on their front page, let's make sure what I'm telling you is true. Okay, Hawaii Volcano Observatory. Oh, you see, this is the Hawaii Volcano Observatory, HVO. You go to their front page. This is their update. See the June 27th lava flow. And then these maps we've been looking at are just linked right here, and the photos are linked right here. So I encourage you just to take a look on a day. They update it once a day. Just take a quick look in the morning and see what happened the previous day. I think it's interesting and informative to sort of think about the implications of this sort of pending threat. Okay? Any other questions on this? All right. So what I want to do next is complete Tuesday's lecture. Okay, so just to remind you, we talked about where volcanoes occur. We talked about the morphology, the anatomy of a volcano, and then we talked about shield volcanoes as one end member. Shield volcanoes being these volcanoes that have a very low profile, so they're very broad compared to their height. They're still very high. Hawaii is a shield volcano. It's 8 kilometers above the seafloor, about 4 kilometers above sea level. So it's very high, 8 kilometer high volcano, but it's much, much wider. Okay, so the other end member volcano is what we call composite volcanoes. Okay, and these are found in a different tectonic environment. The shield volcanoes are found in oceanic environments, so they're found in mid-ocean ridges and they're found at oceanic hotspots. Hawaii is an oceanic hotspot. Composite volcanoes instead are found in subduction zones. They lie directly above subduction zones. And the fact that they live above subduction zones means that there is a much thicker layer of crust, often continental crust, such as in the Pacific Northwest, for example, that is directly above the volcanoes. And so as a result of that, they have higher silica content in the lava than these shield volcanoes have. And the higher silica content means that the lava becomes much more sticky, it's much more viscous, it's much more difficult for it to flow. And as a result of that, these produce these big explosive eruptions. So the eruption of Mount St. Helens, for example, big explosive eruption, these are all eruptions of composite volcanoes. And the reason that they're these big explosive eruptions is because of the high silica content. So Mount St. Helens is one example. So here's a couple of pictures of Mount St. Helens. Vesuvius is another example in Italy. So there is actually ongoing subduction happening in the Mediterranean. It's not a particularly active boundary, as in the plate losses are very low, very small, but there still is ongoing subduction, and that's why we have these composite volcanoes. Okay, so those are the two types of volcanoes, composite volcanoes and shield volcanoes. Yeah. No, so shield volcanoes do not occur over subduction zones. So shield volcanoes occur mid-ocean ridges and oceanic hotspots like Hawaii. Composite volcanoes occur over subduction zones. Yeah. Can shield volcanoes produce a huge explosion? Typically not. So I showed you a photograph last time, let me go back, of a lava fountain, right? So it is possible to get a lava fountain like this where it's being pushed out, but you don't get these huge explosions where you create a massive column of ash that's pushed up into the atmosphere. You only get those for composite volcanoes. Yellowstone is another composite volcano. Well, let me take that back. Yellowstone's a complicated situation. Yellowstone is a hotspot, but it's a hotspot beneath a continental crust. So you're still having this influence of the crust. So it's a sort of an exception. Okay? All right, so let's just kind of run through the hazards associated with volcanoes. We've already been sort of talking about them. Obviously, lava flows, we've talked about a great deal because of the eruption. I really like this photograph, even though it's obviously dated by the cars in the smaller photograph. But, you look at this picture and think, what were they thinking? But in fact, it's not as bad as it actually looks. And the reason is that I happen to know that this is what's called an aha lava. So there's two types of lava, okay? One is, now I'm blanking, Pahoehoe, thank you, Pahoehoe, okay? And so the kind of lava that you see on shield volcanoes, such as I'm going to go back, in Hawaii is Pahoehoe. Okay, and so you can see how you're sort of seeing these flow patterns, these ridges here, they're as a result of the flow. And so that's what we were seeing on those photos from the current eruption in Hawaii. But this one is a lava. I hope I'm saying that right. And what that means is that this has a much higher silica content, all right? And so because it has this higher silica content, it has a much higher viscosity. And so that's why it's this much thicker flow, right? Those flows we were looking at in Kilauea were relatively thin. I mean, they may inflate over time, but the initial flow is relatively thin, like maybe a foot thick or so. And you can see this is the front, and it's, I don't know, at least 2 meters, 3 meters thick, so relatively high viscosity. And that means usually that it travels very, very slowly, okay? So these guys look like they're running, but I don't think they have to run to get away from it. They're probably running because it's extremely hot. And so the radiation is rather bothersome. But anyway, so that's the lava flows obviously are one of the primary hazards, and we've obviously been talking about that. And it's sort of inevitable. They fill the low regions in the valley. I like this one because this is actually the lava flow when it reached one of the visitor centers on Hawaii. This is actually what was left afterwards, and so obviously the visitor center was near the center of the volcano, and not surprisingly, eventually it was burnt by a lava flow. This is a previous eruption in Hawaii, and which sort of went through a housing district on the southeastern flank of Kilauea, if you remember from the maps. And you can see here obviously a very wide lava flow traveling down a valley, and this obviously covers the road. So this is probably what Highway 30 is going to look like by the time this eruption is done, many months from now. And so that's why this, the sort of inevitability aspect, I think, for the local residents is that they know that this is probably what it's going to be like in the long run. And so kind of an immediate effort to stop the flow right in front of their house is probably just going to turn into a very long-term losing battle. Okay, the other threat is ashfall, and this is sort of equally serious because of the area that this can cover. And so ashfall, of course, you only get significant ashfall when you've had one of these big explosive eruptions from a composite volcano. Yeah. Can we predict when the lava flow is going to stop? Basically, no. Okay. So you have a big explosive eruption. This is Mount St. Helens erupting. And then these are some photos after that eruption from some distance away. And so what happens is you have this hot lava. It explosively erupts, which means that all of the lava fragments becomes these tiny little fragments. It's very hot, so it heats the air that's around it. It entrains the air, and that's why this thing shoots up into the air, because of the very hot air that is entrained with this ash. So it's very low density, high buoyancy, and it shoots up into the atmosphere, up to several kilometers in the atmosphere. And then it gets blown along by the prevailing wind. And then as it cools, the ash inevitably falls out. And so this is the underside. This is a photo of the underside of this tephra plume from the Mount St. Helens eruption. And then this is kind of what it looks like when it starts to fall out. And this looks just like a snowy day, but this is actually all ash. Okay? And the reason that these two folks have these scarves on their faces is, of course, it's highly corrosive. It's very sharp. It's like little fragments of glass, tiny, tiny little fragments of glass. And so if you breathe it in, it can do a huge amount of damage to your lungs. It's very hazardous material. This is the threat that the airlines face. This is why the airlines are very concerned about the Aleutian R, for example, where there are eruptions on a more frequent basis. And that's a typical flight path between North America and Asia. And as you probably know, in the past, there have been planes that have flown into these Afra clouds. It does serious damage to the engines. The ash is ingested by the engines. It's very corrosive. It damages the engines. And there was one case of a Boeing 747 that lost all 4 engines and obviously can't stay in the air very long in that circumstance. But it did. They managed to restart just one of the engines just in time, and it managed to make an emergency landing. But that was a very near catastrophe as a result of flying into an ash cloud. So there's a lot of effort to monitor these volcanoes just to be able to tell the airlines when to avoid a particular region. The ash cloud, of course, also can cover a very large area. So we think of Mount St. Helens as being a big eruption, but the ash from Mount St. Helens really didn't cover a very large area at all compared to these other big eruptions that occurred further back in time. So the Glacier Peak eruption, covering this whole region 14,000 years ago. Crater Lake, Long Valley, Yellowstone called here. Of course, people like to talk about Yellowstone as being a supervolcano, and you can see the area that's covered in ash from the eruption at Yellowstone almost 700,000 years ago. So, of course, this is reaching a long way back in time. These events obviously don't happen that frequently, but they do happen, and they will happen again, just like earthquakes. To put Mount St. Helens in context, how many of you, I'm talking about Mount St. Helens as if you know what that is. How many of you are sort of familiar with the Mount St. Helens eruption? Okay, that's reasonable. Okay, good. Okay, so the Mount St. Helens eruption, here, 1980, Mount St. Helens eruption is down here on this sort of list of known eruptions. I never know how to pronounce it, Masma. Up here, the Crater Lake eruption is the largest, but that was 5,000 years BC. And then in Indonesia. And the volcano, the Nova volcano video I would like you to go and watch, talks about some of these very large eruptions and just the scale of the impact that they have, because they put out ash over such a broad region. Yeah. Well, so these lines here are showing the regions where ash from that eruption has been found. Okay? So this, of course, is going back a long way back in time, and so the way we can identify these regions that were affected is by seeing the ash fall in the geologic record, dating it, and being able to associate it with an eruption of those volcanoes. So that means that the actual area that the ash was spread over was probably significantly larger than this, because this is where you can actually see it in the geologic record. Yeah, reasonable thick, yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, Pompeii, of course, is perhaps one of the most famous examples of the impact of an ashfall. Pompeii, of course, was a Roman city that ended its life in AD 79 when there was a big eruption of Vesuvius. And so the Vesuvius erupted, a huge amount of ash was dumped, and the city was literally buried. And so these are casts found in the ash of, obviously, people who were just buried in the ash, and so it created a void in the ash, which later then filled with things, etc., etc. So that gives you a sense of how quickly this process may actually have occurred. And I just love this photo. This is Pompeii, right here. This is Vesuvius, right here. Anybody know what this is? How good your Italian geography? If this is Vesuvius and this is Pompeii, anybody know what this is? Well, it's a town, for starters. Nobody knows what it is. It's Naples, okay, the city of Naples, big city. So the city of Naples is built right between Pompeii, that was completely buried in a matter of hours by an eruption of Vesuvius, and Vesuvius. Good place to live. Another example of the... Oh, question, yeah. Why did only Pompeii get buried? I don't think it's that only Pompeii got buried. I mean, Pompeii was the city in the region. The ash cover was over a very large area, but there was only one town, one city that was affected. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so a more recent example, this is Montserrat in the Caribbean, which had an eruption back in 1997. A huge ash fall. To give you, this is a good old British colony, and this is a good old British telephone box that obviously has been mostly buried. So in case you don't recognize what this is, you can normally stand in them and make a phone call. And so 2/3 of this phone box has obviously been buried by the ash fall. Again, giving you a sense of just the scale of these kinds of eruptions. Okay, pyroclastic flows. That's the next. So this is kind of a. So we talked about lava that kind of flows out and flows down the volcano. We talked about the ash that goes up, forms this big plume, and then gets blown downwind and then sort of falls out just like rain. And then a pyroclastic flow is where it's sort of halfway in between the two, in that you have an explosive eruption that creates all of these ash fragments. But it's too dense to really go up and stay up in the atmosphere, and instead this column of ash collapses, and then but it's still hot, so it still has a lot of air in it, and so it then flows down the side of the volcano, and that's what you're seeing here. It's like a big ash cloud flowing down the side of the volcano. It's dense, so that's why it runs down the side of the volcano, but also it has this air, has hot air in it, so it's very fluid, so it can travel at great speeds, much faster than you can drive, much faster than you can run. And so here's a couple of examples of these pyroclastic flows. These folks probably did not make it, because these flows really do travel very, very fast. It's not just the ash. Don't think of this, if you ended up in this as being surrounded by ash. It's very hot air, so you will just be burnt by the air if you find yourself inside one of these pyroclastic flows. I'm not sure. I think unfortunately, this little animation is the only one I have, and I think it stopped working. But this shows the eruption of there you go, of Mount St. Helens in slow motion. And so Mount St. Helens kind of exploded out of the side, okay? And so it explodes, a big explosive eruption, because a lot of material went up, but it also exploded out sideways. And so these